Hello and welcome to Fit After 40. Our guest today is Nik Daniel of Purely Driven Fitness. Nik is a trainer based in Nashville, right, Nik?
Yep, that's correct. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome,
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
Yeah, looking forward to talking with you. So, Nik, now you're a trainer and you also consume a plant-based diet, correct?
That is correct. Yes. Yeah, I've been eating plants for a long time now, looking at probably almost 30 years. So yeah,
Nice.
things have changed quite a lot. Wasn't a lot
Yeah.
of vegan athletes back when I started to do this. So yeah, it's been a big learning experience. Really working out how to kind of efficiently, work out how to incorporate a plant-based diet into resistance training. But I think I finally nailed it. Took a while.
Well, let's talk about macros then. Obviously, as an athlete, you really have to dial in that nutrition. So, what's
Hmm.
on your plate? Where are you getting your where are you getting your nutrients?
Definitely like to eat a protein focused diet. I think a lot of people in the vegan community probably don't focus on protein enough and probably assume that they're getting enough protein, from beans and whatever else. But I think you have to be a little bit more intentional about protein intake. And I think a lot of people transitioning as well from omnivorous diet into a vegan
Sure.
diet kind of miss this a little bit and think that they can just replace steak with black beans and that's going to kind of cover those bases. But yeah, you definitely have to be intentional about it. So that's always going to be on my plate. Usually seitan, tofu, and tempeh. They're usually the cornerstone of where I get my protein from, and then obviously there's secondary sources, legumes and things like that. Nutritional yeast, and then obviously now you can get fortified nut milks and nut butters and all that kind of stuff as well. So protein, vegetables, moderate carbs, moderate fats. That's
Mhm.
what I usually try to stick to. Then I'll manipulate, depending on what my goals are. If I'm kind of trying to build some more mass, then things will kind of fluctuate a little bit. If I'm trying to trim down, things will change a little bit as well.
Do you use any sort of processed supplements, any protein shakes or anything along those lines, or you try to get everything from Whole Foods?
I do protein shakes. Honestly, more for convenience more than anything else. I would love to obviously get all my protein sourced from whole food,
Of course.
uh, you know, places, but it's just, I just don't have the time to be, making 5 or 6 meals a day. So I do incorporate some protein powders and creatine as well. They're typically the only things I'll use. And sometimes I'll sip on some essential aminos while I'm working out as well.
That's good to know. I've recently switched to being all plant-based
Okay.
and to up my protein intake that I for the first time in my life have been putting in the protein powder. So every morning it's a smoothie with a scoop of plant-based protein powder because it is
Yep.
really tough to find it, all the
Absolutely. Yeah.
protein.
Yeah. If you're aiming for, I don't know, 150 to 200 grams of protein a day, it's tough to do that without, a protein powder with getting it from real food sources. So I think, definitely it makes it more convenient. And, I definitely advocate for that.
On plant-based proteins, really quick, something that comes up a lot. I've been a vegetarian for about 12 years now, and I
Uh
just
huh.
recently eliminated dairy from my diet. But I kind of find it curious, there's always that one person that like talks about the dangers of soy. Would you like to talk a little
Hmm.
bit about that? I mean, tofu has been my primary source of protein for the past decade. So, and
Sure.
I'm always like, I mean, I've been fine. It's worked out perfectly fine for me, but it might be kind of interesting to throw that out there since you're a trainer, you're in that weightlifting world to some
Yep.
degree, and that's the same kind of world. Sometimes we hear a lot of the negative talk about soy.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, with hearing a lot of it lately, just I think with the rise of the carnivore diet and all of this kind of stuff, people are definitely kind of I don't know. There's definitely a backlash against the plant-based diet. I feel like lately. The soy thing is like it's just such a misconception because soy contains phytoestrogens, which is plant estrogen, and people like jump on this term estrogen and think that it's going to feminize you or you're ingesting female hormones. the phytoestrogens actually act in such a smaller way to estrogen as a hormone, and you have to eat so much soy for it to have any kind of effect on, getting man boobs or any kind of feminizing qualities. So it's very, very rare that that's going to have that kind of effect. So yeah, it's a tough conversation, and one that I have to have, quite a lot, because there are a lot of doubters out there, especially when it comes to soy. And even, some doctors out there. I've had some clients who said, "Oh, my doctor said I have to be, wary of soy," and so there's just a lot of misinformation out there, and unless you are willing to delve deeper and really kind of work out what's going on, the science behind this, then just a lot of people just don't know.
So, so you work as a trainer, and when you're onboarding a new client, let's talk about the initial assessment. What questions are you asking? What do you do when you're trying to determine what kind of program is going to be right for this person?
I always, do a 30 to 45-minute consultation with them, depending on if it's an in-person client. So I do in-person training as well as online. So if it's in person, I like them to come to the studio and be able to talk to them face to face. That kind of definitely helps me get a good idea of where they're at. If it's an online client, I always like to do a phone call. Definitely makes it more personal. I typically find that I have three kinds of clients. It varies a little bit, but I feel like there's one kind of client that definitely wants to get into strength training for aesthetic reasons. They want to get jacked. They want to look good. Second kind of client typically is probably getting a little bit older, has heard that strength and resistance training is going to be really good for their bones, going to be good for their quality of life in later age. And then the third kind of client just wants to feel better, wants to definitely just feel better, have more energy, has maybe been feeling a little lethargic. And yeah, so they're typically the clients I get. Most of my clients are probably approaching middle age, which is kind of the area I like to specialize in. Me, myself, being 50, I feel like it's just an important part of life. And I feel like I'm only noticing the benefits more and more as I get older. Yeah. And I just want to help share this with other people and have them realize that getting older does not have to mean what they probably think it means. You can actually, you can counteract that. So when I have these meetings and consultations with people, that's what I first try to establish is, which of these clients they are. And then there's a series of questions, obviously, what experience they've had, what they want to gain from the process. Just try to gauge different things. Nutritionally, where they're at is important. Not all my clients are plant-based or vegan, but most of them, I would say, are definitely interested in either shifting towards that or incorporating more plant-based foods into their diet. So, yeah, those are the things I try to establish. If cardio is part of what they want to do as well, because we do offer hybrid athlete programs as well, which is something new that we didn't previously used to offer. So that's definitely becoming more of a thing. So there's different facets, of course, that we offer that I try to kind of nail.
Could you tell me a little more? In your profile, you describe yourself as a hybrid athlete, and so could you tell me more about what that means? How do you define that?
I think the term hybrid athlete is kind of a relatively new term, and it's a relatively new thing that people are kind of discovering. I think in the past, you're either an endurance athlete or you're a weightlifter, and barely met in the middle. Runners were kind of terrified of lifting weights. They were going to kind of gain too much mass and it was going to affect their performance. Weightlifters didn't want to go, near any cardio for fear that it would kill their gains.
Slim down.
Yeah, exactly. So I think people are finally starting to discover that there's a way of incorporating both, getting the best of both worlds and becoming a hybrid athlete in essence. So that is definitely what I've actually kind of gravitated towards. Recently started incorporating running with resistance training. My wife is super into running. She's actually a running coach, helps me out with the hybrid athlete programs as well.
That's great.
And so she finally twisted my arm and got me into running and discovered that I just felt much better with incorporating more cardio. It's something that I'd always kind of avoided in the past. and have realized that I think that this is kind of the holy grail of fitness if you can manage to incorporate both. Definitely a scientific approach. You can't go all out on both. You kind of have to do things in phases.
It's tough.
So, if you're training for a marathon or something like that, you're not going to go all out on your resistance training. You definitely kind of pull back on that. In your off season from running, then you'll, beef up the resistance training and kind of go a little bit harder with that. So there's definitely a bit of a science to it, but I think once you nail it, it's amazing and nothing beats that.
You do periodize the training, so you would do an off season from running and focus on strength, and then do running in a separate season. You would separate those?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you can definitely do both together, but if training for a race, I would definitely pull back a little bit on the resistance training. You don't want to be maxing out all on those sets and taking every set to failure.
Right.
It's definitely going to affect your level of fatigue when it comes to running.
Right. Do you think when you talk about a hybrid athlete, though, say possibly there's a more important sport for a lot of the people you train, maybe? So, like, say you have a runner there, would you consider it being a hybrid athlete to also incorporate the strength training, but the primary focus of that person is obviously to be a runner or a cyclist or something like that?
Absolutely, yeah. I definitely have clients that lean towards one or the other. Like, it's hard to find someone who equally wants to go, for both. There are some people out there. I don't know if you know of Nik Daniel. He's this probably the most well-known hybrid athlete right now, and he does bodybuilding competitions and he'll do ultra marathons and crazy stuff. Like, obviously he does it in seasons, like I said, but there are some people that go hard after both, which is pretty incredible. But yeah, I have some people that are, some of my clients are ultra marathoners. I have some cyclists as well. So yeah, it's just a matter of kind of strategically incorporating, resistance training if they're more of an endurance athlete, and the other way around, sort of strategically incorporating the endurance training.
And obviously, a lot of these strength routines can assist someone in their goals. For example, as a cyclist, there's a lot of squats and goblet squats and so forth that make you a better cyclist. So you can definitely incorporate that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Strengthening the lower body is definitely going to, the entire body is going to, help with that,
right?
Without a doubt.
So when you're working with a new client, a lot of people, especially if they're new to fitness, let's say you got somebody who's straight off the sofa and hasn't touched a weight or a track since high school or college, this kind of person may struggle to articulate their goals. How do you kind of cut through their uncertainty to really kind of try to figure out what their goals are, or what they're wanting to get out of this?
Typically, I find there are definitely a lot of those people that, like you said, struggle to articulate what they're kind of looking for. I pretty much start all my clients, if it's someone new to resistance training, with an intro program, which is very, very basic, kind of introduction to strength and resistance training. Full body workouts typically will basically work a lot on refining those movements. And as we go, I tend to find that they become better at articulating what they want. So I kind of try to guide them, I guess, in essence, into what I think that they should start with, and then we take it from there, and we discuss as we go, and typically their goals tend to become more obvious to them and to me as we go.
Sure. And you said full body, so do you prefer functional movement over kind of machines that tend to isolate, or do you use a combination of both?
Honestly, if the client has access to both, I prefer a blend of both. I think it's perfect. Once upon a time, I was very much a purist when it came to resistance training. I was all about free weights, focusing on the compound lifts, which I still do. But I think machine-based work definitely come a long way, and definitely in my thinking anyway. Like, I think you gain a lot from working with machines and free weights. So ideally, if a client does have access to that, then that is a direction I will steer them in. My setup downstairs, where I train my clients in person, is free weights only, which is still great. So if they're just coming to see me only, then they will only be working with free weights. But yeah, I have some that come to see me, and then some that go to a gym as well. So then I'll basically have them do the free weight stuff here, and then do machine based stuff at the gym. But I've gained a lot from incorporating more machines into my programs personally over the last few years. As I said, it took me a while to come. I always used to think, machines are for beginners. Free weights all the way. But yeah, machines are great. I've really changed my tune on that a lot.
Good. What about someone who's just working out in the home? Do you have programs, or have you developed programs that can be done in the home using maybe just body weight and resistance bands, or do you have that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And additionally, I have a lot of clients that will go away on vacation, that want to keep up their training. So yeah, I do have programs that are body weight only. Some more HIIT style stuff to really kind of get the heart rate up and get a good workout in.
Sure.
Resistance bands. I don't think there's any excuse not to train. As long as you've got like a little bit of space, then yeah, I think you can get a workout in wherever you are.
You can put resistance bands in your toiletry bag, so
absolutely
the real estate's not a problem. So no excuse, Tony. I hope you're listening.
I know. I have the resistance bands. I just fail to use them. So yeah.
Well, let today be your inspiration.
Bad. Yeah, I'm a historically bad at cross train. I like to run, so I run, and I need to start doing some of the stuff that you're talking about. It's hard for me, and maybe this is something you can talk about. It's really hard for me to find the joy, and honestly, I mean, just being straight honest here, the joy in working out in a gym. I mean, that goes for running, that goes for swimming, goes for anything. I just don't like being inside, so it's very difficult for me to bring myself to that point where I want to go do these things. I know it would make me a better runner to go lift, but when I've got so much time to work out, I can go lift, or I can go out to the trails and I can run in the woods, and I'm going to take the trails every single time.
Yep, I totally get that. And I understand that too. Even from a running perspective, like running on a treadmill versus running outside is just, it's night and day. There's no comparison. When it comes to, working out in the gym, like I think it's just an element of discipline that is required, unfortunately. And I think you do get to a point where it becomes second nature, but something you struggle with, I think there'll probably be a period where you're just going to have to kind of make yourself do it for a while until you build that habit, and you will just do it, unconsciously. But an element of discipline will be required to kind of get to that point.
When you're working with somebody, say like me, that doesn't like the gym, how do you approach that? And then also, I mean, honestly, like and I'm sure a lot of your new clients are like this. I'm not familiar with gym equipment. I haven't had a weightlifting class since I was in high school. So, the machines and all that stuff, I mean, as much as I work out tons every week running, but I don't go to the gym because I find it to be a somewhat intimidating environment too. Like I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't like being in environments where I don't know what I'm doing.
I get that totally. And I have many clients that have felt the same way and feel the same way. I think the easiest thing to do is start a client like that off on the most basic program ever, whether it's just, the machines are very much set up for you to execute that movement in the most easy possible way. So I'll create a program that's very, very easy, mostly machine based, be simple stuff like, machine chest press, lat pull downs, all really easy stuff. But it's really about like building that habit, and I think getting that client to understand that just like I said, an element of discipline is going to be required, but it does get easier. Like it's, you will build that habit, and at some point, I guarantee, you will look forward to it. But it does take a while, and it does take that element of discipline to build that habit. It's not going to come automatically, and you cannot rely on motivation. Like you may have that motivation at the beginning, but that is going to disappear at some point. So that's where that discipline has to kick in, and you really have to kind of just make yourself do it. Think about your why you're doing it, and really kind of, keep focusing on that.
So what are your favorite movements?
Um, I'm kind of a freak in the sense
Okay.
that I like a lot of the stuff that people hate. Whenever you see kind of memes about Bulgarian split squats and walking lunges and stuff like that, like traditionally people hate this stuff. I get some kind of sick way out of Bulgarian squats. They're one of my favorites. There's something about like I don't know, you can feel every single muscle fiber in your lower leg working,
Yes, you can.
and there's just something about putting that dumbbell down and your legs just feeling like jelly that I absolutely love. So Bulgarian split squats are definitely some of my favorite. I do like walking lunges as well for the same reason. It's a great functional movement, and it's just something satisfying about going up to a really heavy weight, walking
Sure.
lunges, and barely being able to lift your leg forward and almost collapsing at the end.
Yeah.
So I like those challenging movements, and typically these days it's lower body stuff. It's crazy because I used to hate lower body workouts. I would always avoid leg
Sure.
day.
A lot of people hate it.
Yeah, I wish I never had. If I could go back in time, I would have been focusing on legs a lot more because now I'm playing catch up.
Sure.
But yeah, I love the lower body stuff now. It's one of my favorite movements for sure.
I'm with you on the split squats. As an avid cyclist, that's an important functional movement for me if I want to make it up that hill. And
Yep,
I also have gotten to the point where I actually enjoy it. Especially when you really feel you're at the end, you're really just toasted and you know you've gotten it done. That is an
yep.
incredibly satisfying feeling.
Yeah, it's yeah, they're just an amazing exercise. Once again, a lot of people hate them, but man, they work. I think that they're up there as far as effectiveness with squats, deadlifts, a bunch of other lower body exercises.
Yeah.
I love them.
What about upper body movements? What are your favorite upper body movements?
Um, I like a lot of rows right now.
Me too.
I love a good seated row. There's a bunch of different handles that I'm really liking right now. There's an angled handle where you kind of do an underhand grip. Just gets a really good pinch in the lats that I like. Also like on an incline bench doing a double dumbbell row up. They're really good as well. Great at
Okay.
isolating the back because you have no you can't jerk the weights or anything like that. It's
You
all
can't
all in the
cheat that
back.
one.
Yeah, gravity is pulling you down, and yeah, so exercises where you can really get that engagement is what I
Sure.
really like. That you can and you can make those slight little tweaks to the movement, and just all of a sudden you get that contraction so much bigger. So I feel like I'm just like on a quest to like improve every movement as much as I possibly can. I don't think that's ever going to end, but that has kind of
Sure.
become my my thing. I think later in life, being at the age I am, rather than just adding more weight to the bar constantly, it's just that refining movements. I really just get into that,
Good, yeah.
and the science of the movement.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of an interesting thing to think about too, is because this podcast is fit after 40 or 50.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously as we get older, and that's a really great point you made there, as we get older, our ability to improve in the ways we improved when we were younger change a lot. So
Absolutely.
do you have any more you want to say about that, about how you look at maybe even your clients that are older and stuff like that and help them find those new kinds of goals that fit more to their age and less to like what they maybe were looking at doing when they were 25 years old or 30 years old, especially with
Yeah,
something like
sure.
strength training. So, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think form and technique definitely just comes to the top of. Whereas, and, when I was younger, I would just get into the gym and just throw weights around and just
Sure.
keep adding weight to the bar and just try to max out and go to failure on all my sets, and that's definitely not at the forefront of my mind right now. I'll still take some sets to failure and still lift heavy, but definitely not doing that on every set anymore. And definitely not doing that unless my form and technique is where I want it to be and exactly where it should be. And that's definitely something I like to focus on with my clients as well. Really, really working on that form and technique, especially the older clients. You can't afford an injury. As you get older,
Sure.
it takes a lot longer to recover. My main kind of goal is to keep my clients injury free and keep myself injury free. So yeah, it's all about form, technique, recovery. I rarely train more than 2 days in a row now without a recovery
Okay.
day. In the old days, sometimes I'd train 7 days a week and keep going, and I just don't do that anymore. I try to separate my endurance training and strength training as much as possible, and really try and strategically incorporate both. But yeah, it's all about recovery, form, and technique. I think they're the cornerstones of how I like to train now as an older athlete.
Yeah, I want to say when you were talking about your favorite movements, you covered most of mine. The only one of my favorite movements that you didn't mention is the wood chop. For
Yes.
core, I love
Yep.
with my resistance bands. I love the wood chop. That's the only one that you didn't mention
Yep.
of my favorites. So it sounds like
Yep.
we're pretty closely aligned on that. Assuming you also you don't hate the wood chop. I hope.
No, love a good wood chop. You're great for the oblique to get that torso twist.
That
Yeah,
core
love
movement.
that. Yep.
So let's talk a little more about how goals adjust as you age. So I'll tell you, for me personally, my target has always been to be able to do 3 or 4 sets of 10 pull-ups. I want to bench press my body weight. I used to be able to bench press it 6 or 8 times. Now it's
Uh-huh.
more like 4 times. But how do you adjust the actual resistance goals as people get older? Do you think we should still try to lift that heavy?
I think it depends on the individual. Obviously, it's a little bit different if someone's been strength training their entire lives to someone that's new to it. But I think those goals, like bench pressing your body weight, I think it's still a realistic goal for someone, probably up to being 60 years old. I think that's still a realistic goal. Pull-ups, it's going to depend as well. Something like pull-ups, it depends on the weight of the individual as well. Obviously,
Sure.
that's a lot more difficult if someone's 200 pounds or more. If they're a little lighter, pull-ups become a little easier. But I mean, most of all, I think goals should change. I think it's where you're taking those reps. I think taking sets to failure and really maxing out and doing, really low reps at heavy weight is probably not as advisable as we age. Only because it just gets a little bit harder on our joints, and that
Sure.
recovery just becomes a little bit harder. So these days, I think keeping some reps in the tank is better as you get older. Keeping the rep range a little bit higher, maybe more like 8 to 12. Where previously I used to work in a rep range that was more 5 to 8. I'll still occasionally do that, but now try to keep the reps a little bit higher, just so not working with weight as heavy as I used to. Just trying to keep those joints healthy more than anything.
Yeah, I've had some rotator cuff, not
Mm-hmm.
bad, but it happens. It catches up with us, and yeah, I've got a buddy right now who's recovering. He always tries to deadlift too much, and
Okay.
then before you know it, he's laying on an ice pack. So which kind of does segue us into technique, because you did
Mm-hmm.
mention, obviously injury prevention is the name of the game.
Yep.
So let's talk about form correction. Let's take my buddy who's injured his back a few times. What are
Mm-hmm.
you looking for when you're doing those kind of those deadlift type exercises where you do run a risk of injury, especially if you're going heavy? What should we
Sure.
avoid?
I think with deadlifts, I mean, obviously it's a high risk exercise. It's
Yep.
there's a lot of reward if you can master the deadlift and perform the deadlift without injury, but it is high risk. What I've found is I think that most people that do sustain an injury from deadlifting have not worked their glutes and hamstrings enough in the
Okay.
past. And I think glute and hamstring development is really, really important. I mean, when it comes to, you know, preventing injuries in our entire posterior chain, I think working on the glutes and hamstrings is key. And I think that is, once you've got that engagement, the glutes and the hamstrings, and a lot of strength back there, that's going to take off a lot of that load that takes place in the lower back. And a lot of injury that takes place is because people just aren't able to engage the rest of the posterior chain as much.
Okay.
So I do have clients that want a deadlift, or I'm incorporating deadlift into their program. We're always doing like a lot of barbell hip thrusts, Romanian deadlifts, stuff that's working those muscles around the lower back to help prepare for the deadlift. So we're going to be doing that before we do deadlift sets with deadlifts, and even before we even start incorporating deadlifts into a program. So a lot of time it's that muscle balance and symmetry and really making sure that all those muscles are working simultaneously around that targeted muscle. So yeah, there's a lot of secondary muscles that come into it. And if you're lacking strength and engagement there, then maybe that lower back is just taking on too much load in an exercise such as the deadlift.
So that's an important consideration. A complete program becomes critical there. You can't just do one exercise in a vacuum, can you?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
How do you change your programs for men as opposed to women? Are they pretty comparable? You're just adjusting the resistance to the individual, or do you have different recommendations for men versus women?
Honestly, mostly the programs are identical. How a program
Okay.
a man and a woman. There's not much change, especially I think with a lot of the goals these days of women. Like I think strength and resistance training is becoming a lot more common, and I feel like the women that come and see me they're not coming to see me to get skinny. They're coming to see me to put on muscle. And that means training hard. I have them training hard, and they do train hard. And I mean, some of them are lifting heavier than my male clients. So
Mhm.
there's not much change in the program at all. Obviously, I do have women that come to see me that want to focus a little bit more on glutes and lower body.
Sure.
So we do some more specific stuff geared towards that. But typically the programs are pretty similar.
Yeah, I saw one of your Instagram posts recently, and it was specifically about women and their fear of getting too bulky. And I think your commentary was on how that's not a likely outcome. And actually, it's kind of interesting because my daughter is a pretty serious ballet dancer, and of course, she's
Okay,
always concerned with lifting because they
sure.
can't become bulky. So maybe
Uh-huh.
talk a little bit about that.
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know where this kind of misconception came from, but I think people need to realize that, and men as well, in order to become bulky, it takes years and years of dedication, manipulating your calories, like training hard, training your butt off to even put on the slightest amount of muscle. It doesn't happen by accident. I think people are starting to realize now that that's the case, that you have to be so dedicated to
Hmm.
bulky. It's not going to happen. Like you can be lifting heavy, but if your calories aren't matching what you're doing, then you're not going to put on bulk. You're going to put on some
Right.
muscle, but it's going to be lean muscle. The bulk comes from a ton of calories, like a ton of calories. And a lot of these women that do get bulky and are bodybuilders, they're eating like 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day. It's
Wow.
yeah, there's a lot of work involved. Do not fear the bulk.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not gonna happen unless you want it to happen.
Mhm.
That's actually exactly what I was about to ask. Thanks for jumping in there, Tony. While we're on program development, so most of your clients, how many days a week are you recommending that they strength train?
Um, it depends on the goals. Once again, like if you're really serious about creating some big changes in your physique, I think you want to be looking at you know 3 to 4 times a week, ideally.
Okay.
You can go up to 5 or 6 times a week, depending on your age as well. Um, I do have some clients that only see me 1 day a week, but then they're doing other stuff outside of this as well. They
Sure.
might be uh, yoga instructors, or they do some other stuff, or an endurance athletes. So it really depends on the person, but I definitely would advise the average person to at least 2 times a week. Somewhere between two
Okay.
and five would be ideal, I think, to get the true benefits.
Sure.
Mhm.
And how do you balance in the cardio? So let's say that I'm committing to 3 days a week strength training. We're doing pushing, pulling, legs, maybe. I don't know how you
Mm-hmm.
define it. We could talk about that in a moment. And then how many days of cardio are you going to throw in there?
Once again, it depends on the goal.
Mhm.
If I have a hybrid athlete program for the, it's going to be a little bit different. We have a whole separate kind of component where they're incorporating the running or whatever as well. If they're looking just to kind of keep, body fat at bay and keep slim, then 10,000 steps a day is a good kind of baseline that I try to get my clients to do, just to kind of keep lean. And then, it depends, if I have a client that wants to really cut down and trim down a lot, then it might mean a little bit more. It might mean incorporating some more cycling. It might mean cardio twice a day. It varies greatly depending on the goals. Most of my clients, I would say, are just looking to kind of, stay relatively lean. So yeah, 10,000 steps a day is a good kind of ballpark figure. I feel like people stay pretty lean and hang on to a lot of muscle, keeping just, in that zone 2 kind of area at the most. So yeah, that's generally what I advise.
And what's your favorite cardio personally? You mentioned running and cycling.
Yeah, I'm a runner myself, so I love running. Not everyone loves running. I have a couple of clients that are cyclists, or into rowing. Running is my cardio activity of choice. I love getting out there. Nashville has some amazing spots around here to run. So
absolutely.
Yeah, we're really lucky to be kind of living near some great areas. We're like running distance to Shelby Bottoms, and my wife and I do a lot of runs going through there and into the Two Rivers Parkway. And yeah, it's some really beautiful spots around here. So yeah, I love getting out there. It's just, I never used to like running, and then something kind of clicked, and I just realized, wow, this endorphin after running is really, it's different to resistance training, and one that I really enjoy, and I enjoy the difference in the buzz that you get from it.
I think that's, earlier you were talking about, I was talking about my resistance to the gym, to my resistance to resistance training, I guess.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with running. I think for a lot of people, it just takes some time, and once you get out there and you do it day after day after day, you finally kind of get that groove, and then you just begin to love it, and then just keep on pushing that distance further and further and further, and just seeing what your body can do, and it just makes it such a great experience.
Yeah, once you get through that discomfort, it sucks when you start. It's like, your heart's racing, you feel like you're dying, and then once you get, beyond that and get to that level where you really start to enjoy it, you're able to kind of take in things around you and the weather, and yeah, it can be a really amazing experience.
We've gotten lucky with some good weather. Pennsylvania is not known for its nice weather, but today is a 60 and sunny. So I actually got out and did a ride before we jumped on this. So that was fun.
Nice.
Yeah. So while we're on strength training, I was keep going back to that. On strength training, you mentioned a moment ago that in your younger days you were doing kind of 3 or 4 reps, probably almost right up to that 1 rep max, 90%, and now you kind of push toward 8 to 12. Is that what you work your clients through, a little bit higher reps? What percent of the one rep max are you doing with that 8 to 12 reps?
I think it, depending on the client, it usually somewhere between 60 to 80% the 1 rep max, I think, is a good kind of ballpark kind of figure. But yeah, I just, those early days of doing lower reps and stuff like that, I do obviously have some, not all my clients are in my age group. I do have some younger ones that are definitely looking for that kind of more strength and powerlifting kind of vibe. So we do kind of, sometimes keep the reps lower, and go all out a little bit more. So I do have some clients that train differently to me, but typically, for those in my age group, I've found what works for me, and I try and kind of, translate that to them as well. And most of them, I think I've had success with. So,
how often do you change up your personal routine, and how often do you rework the program for your clients? I know those are 2 separate questions.
My own personal routine, I can pretty not that frequently at all. I meant to say, like sometimes I will stick on the same routine for like maybe 4 months. Just if I'm making progress still with the lifts that I've programmed for myself, then I'll just keep working at them, keep chipping away, refining the form and technique. When it comes to my clients, I like to keep things a little bit more interesting to them. I think if I was doing the same stuff with them over 4 to 6 months, I'd probably get a little bored and go a little stir crazy. So we'll definitely keep like the compound lifts, the main primary lifts the same, because I want obviously them to keep them progressing and stuff like that. So there's always going to be some kind of squat, row, push, exercise. So we'll definitely keep working with that, and I'll usually change up the more isolation exercises to keep things interesting for them. So it's a fine line. You want to kind of switch things up a little bit so things stay interesting, but at the same time, you want your clients to continue to progress. So we still want to work on those same movements that they're making progress with.
Okay. Really quick, I wanted to rewind, since we've talked a lot about strength training, and rewind to the fact that you are a plant-based athlete. And we know that this is a popular trend, and it comes and goes in ways. I mean, in running, what I like to do, Scott Jurek famously was vegan for years and years and years, and competed and won Western States many times on a plant-based diet. Talk a little bit about why you choose a plant-based diet, and do you encourage your folks that you train to do that? I know you said not all your athletes that you're training are on plant-based diets, but do you encourage that? And what are the benefits you see from that in your training program?
As I said, I've been vegan for a very long time. These days, primarily my reasons for doing this is for the animals. 100% vegan for the animals. Once I learned about kind of the animal agriculture atrocities that happened there, and the exploitation of animals and use of animals in our society, it's something that, regardless of the health benefits and the environmental benefits, that's my primary stance on being vegan. At the same time, though, I do feel like the health benefits are, amazing. Like, I continually get amazing blood work results when I go to my doctor. I've never been on any kind of medication for blood pressure or cholesterol or anything like that. And
wonderful.
I know this is, a pretty rare thing at my age. I know I'm not on any kind of medication, and most people who sees my age are. When it comes to sort of advocating this diet to my clients, it's something I have to definitely tread carefully with. I'm not a nutritionist or a dietitian or anything like that. So I definitely can recommend things, and I do have a recipe ebook that I give to my clients that are interested in incorporating more plant-based stuff that are very macro friendly. So I give them that, but it's something I tend not to be too pushy with. But I do find that most people that come to see me do have some interest in a plant-based diet or veganism, so it does come up, obviously. But it's a tough thing as a personal trainer. We're not supposed to really delve too much into the nutritional side of things, just because we aren't nutritionists or dietitians. So, it's something I tread carefully with when it comes to that, for sure.
I like that, and it's clearly part of who you are. I mean, looking at your social media, it's very much a part of how you branded yourself, I feel like. But and I like the fact that you answered it was for animals, because I think so many times people, and this is kind of totally off topic, people discount that reason for choosing a plant diet, or people that are on a plant-based diet are almost quiet about saying that that's the reason why they're on that diet. And that's a very good and valid reason to advocate for a plant-based diet, I think.
Yeah, I think it's, my wife and I, we're massive animal lovers. We have 2 pet potbelly pigs. I don't know if you know that, but yeah, we've got a couple of pigs, and knowing, what goes on, in particular, seeing what happens with pigs, and
it's unconscionable.
When there is an alternative that is viable, that is healthy, that is awesome, it just seems like a no-brainer, really.
Yeah.
And pigs are incredibly intelligent animals. I mean, it really is like we're eating dogs. In terms of the intelligence and the personality.
Yep. They're sentient beings, and very, very smart, and they go through hell. It's horrible. Some of the very hard to watch a lot of the footage on some of those documentaries. So
very much so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even people who are omnivores, many of them need to eat more vegetables. You mentioned that you do have a recipe book. Do you think you could share a recipe or two with us that we could throw up on the blog?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my stuff is pretty simple. I try to come up with stuff that I can, throw together in 10 minutes. But
It's
yeah,
ideal.
I've got, yeah, I can definitely, I can throw some recipes your way. Mainly, as I said, very macro friendly, protein
Right.
focused, just designed to be able to like put together really quickly.
Mhm.
And I have like the way I eat, I have maybe 12 recipes and I just rotate these recipes.
Hmm.
Depending on if I'm, bulking or trimming down, I'll just change the ratios
Tweak it.
of things. But yeah, that's that's kind of the way I eat. Some people might find, that boring, but it works for me. And the recipes are tasty too.
Easy is good.
Yep.
Easy is
I
good.
think,
We're all busy people.
yeah, I think especially for athletes, running or weight training, you're always running around, going to the
Mhm.
gym, or trying to eat on the run, and yeah. So I try to keep things as simple as possible.
So my last question for you, as people get older, obviously, a lot of people do. I imagine a lot of your clients come to you and they have some pre-existing old injuries or sensitivities, and I want to ask how you work around that. Let's say maybe maybe it's a rotator cuff, maybe it's a knee. Do you mind addressing how you would make sure that person has a whole body training experience while being sensitive to those joints that may be uncomfortable or injury prone?
Yeah, I mean it's a tough one, but probably I would say 75% of my clients have had some kind of an injury in the past, or working with a current injury that we have to be mindful of. So it's a tough one, but I do believe that there's always ways to work around an injury, and that can honestly be something as simple, say let's use rotator cuff injury or shoulder injury as an
Mhm.
example. Even just tweaking the way, just say we're doing a dumbbell shoulder press, just by rotating the dumbbell slightly,
Okay.
changing the movement, bringing it in more narrow or a little bit wider. There are so many ways that you can actually still perform that movement effectively just by making the slightest adjustments. So it's just a matter of like really trying to work with that client. We'll start with some very light weights and trying to work out what works for them. If we can find a way to still do that exercise, and work that muscle without any kind of discomfort or pain. I've definitely had my fair share of injuries in the past as well. I've had a pretty
Mhm.
bad shoulder injury where I had to
Mm.
kind of almost had to go back to zero on my chest presses, shoulder
Oh,
presses
wow.
and it took about a year to get back to where I was. So having experienced a lot of this stuff myself, I've managed to kind of, accumulate a good arsenal of ways to kind of
Mhm.
still work those muscles. But it's tough, the knees, shoulders, elbows, these are all areas that frequently lower back, they're
Mhm.
prone to injury. And it happens a lot. So yeah, it's just a matter of finding ways to work around that. And then obviously, I'm not a doctor or a physical therapist, so if it seems to
Sure.
be something that is more serious, I do always recommend that they go see someone.
Yeah, I had a tendonitis in the elbow last year, and it was almost a full year before I was back to where I was. And I actually did go through physical therapy. It was
Yeah,
incredibly beneficial. So, I always recommend if somebody's having persistent pain, physical therapists can work wonders in life.
yeah, and at the same time, it's always good to kind of try and work out the difference between pain and discomfort as well. If a movement is actually worse, or if
Hmm.
it's just kind of working through the injury and actually could be making it better in the long run. So
Right.
yeah, it takes a lot of communication with me and the client to kind of work out where they're at and make sure that they're doing a movement safely and effectively, and it's actually going to help, not hinder their progress.
Mhm. Do you have any tips on or any way that you help clients sort through that pain discomfort dichotomy? A lot of times that's a big thing in a lot of endurance sports is like, well, am I just really uncomfortable, and is that pain a
Yep.
pain that's going to go away after a couple nights of sleep, or is that like something that's going to stick around for a good long while?
When does it become a pathology? Yeah.
Yes, that's a tough one, and it's especially I think tough with newer clients. A lot of them have never experienced that discomfort that comes
Right.
with resistance training. So it's just a matter, like, you really have to be observant, and I think you can tell a lot by people's expressions on their face, whether they're experiencing pain or just simply discomfort and a reaction like they've never experienced before. So it's just communication and really asking a lot of questions, like what does that feel like? Watching out for facial expressions, seeing how they react after they've put down the weights. So they like kind of really kind of rubbing their shoulder or whatever body part we're working on. But yeah, you really have to be in tune with what the client is doing and really trying to make sure that they're performing the exercise effectively and safely as well. A lot of communication and a lot of questions have to be asked for sure.
Definitely. That's a great approach. Well, Nik, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. If one of our listeners want to find you, I know you're active on Instagram. What is your Instagram handle?
Instagram is Purely Driven Fitness, all one word. There's also purelydrivenfitness.com is a website which tells you a little bit more about the packages. But yeah, Facebook as well. I have Purely Driven Fitness on Facebook. So, yep, you just put in Purely Driven Fitness to Google and it'll take you to the right places.
Wonderful.
And we can put that up on the blog. Yeah.
Great. Sure. That would be awesome. Yeah. Thanks, guys, so much. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time.
Along with your recipe, be sure to send us a picture of the pigs to put on our blog too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll do that for sure.